Hello everyone, tonight we are in a room that forgets you every time you leave. The corners slope gently inward as though once softened by long-forgotten weeping, and the smell of soil lingers faintly metallic like breath held too long in a grave. You are here now. You can feel your weight on the floorboards, but they do not feel yours. The wallpaper peels just slightly behind you as if turning away from your presence. And on the dresser sits something you do not remember bringing, a small stone-bodied doll, older than your memory, heavier than it looks. Its face is blank except for the grooves where eyes might once have been scratched in, and its hands are folded across its chest like someone expecting to be buried respectfully again. You probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You found the doll by accident, of course. That's how these things usually go. You weren't digging for treasure or summoning anything ancient, just weeding behind the shed in that long patch of nettles where no one steps barefoot. The trowel struck something solid like the edge of a promise someone forgot to keep, and there it was. A palm-sized stone figure wrapped in roots like they were trying to drag it back down. You lifted it out. You shouldn't have, but you did. It was made of some smooth volcanic glass like obsidian dulled by centuries underground. The limbs were stubby but not crude, carved with a kind of reverence. The fingers had once been separated before the earth, or some earlier fire melted them into prayer. You told yourself you'd put it back tomorrow. Tomorrow told you nothing. That night the dream came. A girl made of ash stood beside 6 shallow graves pointing at each in turn. Her eyes were mirrors, and in them, you saw yourself growing older but never wiser, digging the same hole again and again. You woke to the sound of stone tapping on your windowsill. Not knocking, just practicing. There's a strange detail you've always remembered from your grandmother's stories, the ones she whispered when she thought you were asleep. She said some dolls don't like staying in one grave too long. She said they listen to your dreams for instructions. She also said never to name them. Names make them curious. You haven't given the doll a name, but you have called it she, and that was enough. Archaeologists in the late 1800s found dozens of similar stone dolls in the Vinča region of southeastern Europe, some dated to 5000 BCE. They called them idols, figurines, charms. No one could agree on their purpose. Some had no face, some had many. One was found inside a burial urn with its arms broken off. Another was buried standing up facing a cave wall. A third was discovered in a child's grave, but the bones beside it weren't human. Some researchers still argue whether these dolls were offerings or warnings. Some say they were for luck. Some say they were meant to keep something in. A few say they were never meant to be found twice. You've already found her once. Tonight you dream again. In the dream, the 6 graves open like mouths and a hand reaches out of each. Not to grab, but to beckon. The doll stands beside you, taller than before, whispering in a language you only understand when you're half asleep and very afraid. You wake up with dirt in your hair. You sweep the floor, shake out the sheets, check your boots. Nothing. And yet you smell loam in your pillowcase. When you turn back toward the dresser, the doll is gone. No, wait, she's just closer. She's on the desk now, sitting perfectly upright, balanced where no object that shape should balance. You do not remember moving her, but you do remember saying aloud before sleep, I should keep her where I can see her. That was her invitation. If you're looking for a laugh, maybe next time say I should keep her buried in a volcano, just a suggestion. And here's the part that really shouldn't bother you but does. You take a photo of her on your phone, just to prove she's real. You look away, you look back. She hasn't moved. You check the photo. It's blank, just your desk. A pen, a notebook, no doll. Of course your battery is now at 6%. You haven't used it all day. And the screen is faintly warm, like it's been held by something that doesn't radiate heat so much as memory. That night you hear a child's voice humming from under the floor. 6 notes. You hum them back. You don't know why. And from somewhere in the house, something hums the next verse. It is a lullaby for someone who has never slept. You try not to take it seriously. After all, it's just an old doll. It doesn't have joints. It doesn't have eyes. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't need to. The next morning, you find a small patch of soil beneath the kitchen table, loose, damp, and shaped like something small curled up in the fetal position. You sweep it quickly, like it's a spill, but it leaves a stain the mop won't lift, and the air smells like crushed pine and rusted coins for hours. You search for the doll, half hoping she's gone. She isn't. She's outside now, resting gently at the base of the tree where your dog used to sleep. She faces away from the house, arms still folded back, dusty from dew. You pick her up with gloves this time. You whisper something you don't remember saying. You bury her again, in the front yard, deeper. That night she dreams of you. You're not sure how you know this. Maybe because when you wake, the window is open and a small footprint, not yours, not a child's, not even human, is pressed into the dust on your sill. Maybe because your gloves are gone. One of the oldest known graveyards in the world is at a site called Sungir in Russia. Around 34,000 years old, it holds 2 children laid head-to-head, dressed in clothing decorated with over 10,000 ivory beads. Beads that would have taken over 700 hours to carve. Buried with them were spears made from mammoth tusk, sharpened and unused. For centuries, scholars assumed the spears were tools for the afterlife. One researcher now believes they were never meant to be touched, each child a decoy for something else. A misdirection, like calling a haunted thing a doll. At breakfast, you say nothing. It's easier that way. The person across from you, partner, roommate, friend, maybe just a tired stranger, doesn't comment on your pale face or your fingernails packed with loam. They only ask if you left the front door open all night. You say no, of course not. And they nod. Then they say, someone left a bundle on the step, wrapped in muslin, tied with twine. You open it with garden shears, hands sweating. Inside is something dry, ancient, and carefully arranged. 6 small stones each, shaped like a tiny head, each one broken at the mouth. You laugh. You have to. It's either that or scream. Must be one of those archaeological subscription boxes, you say. They send you cursed artifacts monthly. Real niche. Your friend doesn't laugh. Later, you Google it. There is no such subscription box. But now, your browser thinks you're very interested in Neolithic ritual bundles, stone fetishes, and the spiritual significance of dolls in pre-agricultural societies. One article includes a helpful diagram titled, "How to Tell If You've Been Marked for Burial." You save it. Ironically, the dolls there are more now don't move in sight. You've watched them carefully, but they do seem to wait for the right sentence. Every time you speak aloud something fearful or doubtful or lonely, one appears nearby. As though you are the ritual and your words are the prayers that summon them. It's starting to feel like there are 6 of them. Maybe there always were, but they appear one at a time. Never in front of a mirror, never beside each other, always watching something slightly behind you. There's an odd piece of folklore you stumble across in a late-night forum post. Probably fake, probably not. In a certain village deep in the Carpathians, it's said that dolls were once used to weigh guilt. Each grave dug for a child was first filled with 6 carved watchers. If the soil accepted them, if the graves stayed sealed, they were left. If the graves reopened, the child was never buried again. No one talks about what happened to the dolls after. Some researchers still argue whether this practice actually existed. The records are sparse. The graves are real, but the watchers are missing. A few old field notes from 1924 mention gravestones shaped like infants that vanished after storms. One ethnographer scribbled, "They are not buried. They are waiting. You decide to test it. You rebury one of the dolls at the edge of the woods. You leave no marker. You tell no one. You whisper no name. In the morning, it's not in the woods anymore. It's in your sock drawer, with a tiny clump of moss beside it. That night you hear movement, not footsteps exactly, but the sound of something pacing in place. A rhythm, like someone walking in a circle carefully, over and over. The sound comes from under the bed. You don't look. You wait. You sleep. And when you wake, there's dirt beneath your fingernails again and a single bead on your pillow. Ivory white, whittled. A face with no eyes. By now, you've stopped calling it strange. You've begun calling it routine. You wash the soil off your hands before brushing your teeth. You check under the bed without flinching. You say good night to the dolls out loud, just in case they're the sort that prefers acknowledgement. It would be rude not to. And you've always been polite to guests. One night you decide to test something. You place one of the dolls outside the house, carefully, respectfully, as though returning a borrowed thing. You whisper just to the wind that she doesn't have to come back if she doesn't want to. In the morning, the doll is not outside. She's inside your pillowcase, wrapped in your scarf, with a single leaf folded beneath her arms, the kind that doesn't grow in this hemisphere. There is recorded in the margins of a 9th century monastery text a warning about gray children who carry leaf lanterns in grave paths. Scholars believe it refers to a misremembered folktale, or perhaps a corrupted description of burial rituals involving tokens of the forest. But one line has never been satisfactorily translated. Loosely it reads, "They return only to the hands that drop them." You begin to think she never left your hands at all. That night you place her in the shed, you lock the door. You place something heavy in front of it, you go to bed satisfied. You dream of a nursery filled with silent standing children. They rock slightly side to side but do not blink. One of them has your voice. You wake up with a splinter in your mouth. She is on your nightstand again, arms folded, leaf missing. There is no point in being dramatic. You try humor. You tell your friend lightly, "Over toast, I think I've been adopted by a prehistoric babysitter." They blink. "You mean the doll?" You stop. "You've seen her." They nod. "Yeah. I put her in your sock drawer yesterday. I thought she was one of your weird little story props." You smile too quickly. "Right, yes, of course. That's exactly what she is." They look confused. "Wait, she's not." You change the subject. The human capacity for denial is an underrated evolutionary advantage. You start reading about ritual burials again. About dolls that appear in archaeological contexts buried deliberately, sometimes among beads, sometimes among ash. One source mentions the Zvenjaki burial ground in Latvia. In grave 316, archaeologists found the remains of a child buried with a carved figure, unusually positioned at the feet rather than the hands. The doll was burned black, its surface pitted like it had once been buried inside fire. But it hadn't charred the soil. It had refused the soil. Some researchers still argue whether the doll was buried with the child or for the child. Others suggest it was neither. That it was not a gift but a boundary stone meant to say this far and no farther. The soil had not listened. You begin to dig again, not because you want to, because you need to know if there's something else beneath your yard. Something older. Something buried 6 times in 6 different places, always alone. You find nothing. You find everything. You dig beneath the oak tree, beneath the front porch, beneath the stepping stones. You find empty space shaped like sorrow. You find stones arranged in circles. You find a spoon, not yours. And then, under the rotting garden bed, you find her again. Not a copy, not a new one. Her, the same doll. Arms folded, leaf tucked under her arms again, waiting. This time you don't rebury her. You place her in the middle of the house. You sit beside her. You say, "I see you." For a moment, the air feels like dusk, not the time of day. The temperature of dusk, a cooling that begins in the bones, in the breath, in the space behind your heart. The fan stops spinning. The clock loses sound. The world narrows. And from the corner of the room comes a knock, not a loud one. Just a gentle, correct knock, as though something has been waiting for its turn to be invited in. Just once. You do not answer. You hum instead. 6 notes, the lullaby. She hums the 7th. You decide not to speak for a while. It's not out of fear, exactly. You've simply begun to notice that words have weight, and some of yours are starting to rot in the air the moment you speak them. Better than to listen, to observe, to wait like the doll does. For the first time in weeks, she doesn't move. She stays seated at the center of the house, hands folded like a question head, tilted ever so slightly toward the east-facing window. The others, yes, you're certain now there are 6 take-up quiet stations. One beneath the sink, one atop the fuse box, one inside the bookshelf where the shadows never quite leave, one balanced on the dryer drum, one floating half visible in the dusty reflection of your bathroom mirror. They don't hide, they remember. You notice that the mirrors in the house no longer reflect light correctly. They seem to delay it, just by a second, like they're thinking it over. There's a passage in a Mesopotamian tablet describing a funerary custom for clay dolls. The figures were bathed in oil painted with soot and buried beneath the threshold of the home facing inward. They were called ekimusa, silent echoes. Not for the dead, but for those who stayed behind. If the echo returned too quickly, it meant something had followed the soul back. Some researchers still argue whether the dolls were guardian soul bearers or something else entirely. The rituals changed abruptly after a certain period. The figures stopped being buried and were instead bricked into walls, sealed away mid-prayer, arms folded just like yours. You wonder if maybe you've misread everything. Maybe the dolls aren't the threat. Maybe they were always the warning. A few nights later, your friend who hasn't mentioned the doll again comes home pale and quiet. They leave their shoes outside. Their phone is turned off. You ask what's wrong. They look at you and say, "She followed me to work." You try to joke. "I hope she brought a resume." But your friend doesn't laugh. "I left her in my locker, closed it, walked away. When I came back, she was sitting on my desk, facing the monitor, like she was learning." You want to ask, learning what? Instead, you say, "She probably just wanted better lighting." This time you do get a laugh, a brittle one. But that night your friend wakes screaming. Not words, just the sound of something trying not to be heard. The sound of a scream folded in half. You find them sitting on the edge of the bathtub, eyes red, hair damp from sweat. They say only one thing: "I saw the 6th grave open." You do not ask what was inside. Instead, you walk the house. You gather the dolls, all 6. You place them in a circle in the living room facing inward. You light a candle in the center. You hum the lullaby again. 6 notes. This time nothing hums back. But the floor is cold beneath your feet. You sit beside them. You stay up until dawn. At some point, you fall asleep, forehead against your knees, candle burned out. When you wake, the dolls are gone. In their place are 6 small graves. Not outside, inside. One beneath the coffee table, one inside the linen closet, one where the leak under the sink used to be, one in the exact footprint of your friend's shadow still faintly visible in dust. One where your bed used to sit because you moved it last week, remember? And one beneath the window that never opens all the way. Each grave shallow, each grave full, but not of dirt. Inside each is something soft, Something warm. Hair. Skin. Breath. You cannot say how you know, but you do. They are not bodies exactly. They are possibilities. And they're all you. From different moments. From different endings. All the yous who buried her. All the yous who didn't. All the yous who named her. It's quiet for a long time. Then a knock at the door. Not gentle, not harsh. Just familiar. You do not answer. You hum. She hums the seventh note. And behind you the seventh grave begins to open. You are very careful now. With your words. With your thoughts. With your hands. You step through that house like it remembers everything you've ever tried to forget. The dolls are not visible anymore, but the house is heavier. Its silence has a spine now. Its shadows have joints. Some nights you dream of the seventh grave. Some nights you wake to find dirt under your tongue. There's a strange line in an untranslated Etruscan funerary inscription passed around only in fragments. The hand that opens the grave forgets the one that closed it. For years, linguists couldn't agree on the syntax. One theory is that the line wasn't about a burial at all, but about a doll. A votive, a vessel, a proxy. Not meant to be touched more than once. You didn't mean to touch her. You certainly didn't mean to keep her. But she stayed, and the others came. And now there are 7 graves in your house, and you do not know which one you are buried in. That's the thing about ghost stories. They only work if you think you're still alive. The knock at the door has stopped. You didn't answer it, and that seems to have been enough. For now. But lately you've noticed a new sound. A soft dragging, not across the floor, not beneath it, above. As if something is being pulled across the roof. Slowly, gently, repeatedly. Like a doll too large to be carried all at once. You try to laugh? Great. She's making something bigger. Can't wait for the warranty paperwork. But your voice catches. Because part of you wonders, what if that sound isn't above? What if the roof is only the 6th wall and you're inside something else? You've stopped turning on the lights. They flicker too easily now, and sometimes the switch feels warm like a hand just pulled away. You leave the fan running even though the air doesn't move. You start sleeping during the day. It's safer. The 7th grave is still unopened. You haven't dared, but you feel its shape pressing upward, like a breath being held under the floorboards, like something patient. Your friend moved out last week. No words, just a note. I dreamed her name. I won't say it. Please don't either. You burned the note. The ash spelled nothing, and now the air in the house is full of small, heavy silences. Like 6 dolls watching you without needing to be present. Like something listening with your own ears. So you try something new. You dig up. Into the attic. You were sure it was just insulation and forgotten boxes, but the floor is bare. Packed dirt. 6 mounds low and round. 1 flattened. And in the center a small figure. Not the doll. A mirror? You approach it carefully. It's shaped like a child's silhouette. Too wide, too narrow. Its surface is fogged, but doesn't reflect anything. When you kneel before it, your reflection appears delayed as usual, but something's different. You are not blinking. You wait. Your reflection does not. Then you see it behind your shoulder in the mirror. Only a hand rises from the 7th grave. Delicate. Folded. Stone. She touches your shoulder. The mirror cracks. Just once. No sound. You wake up outside, in the yard. There's no dirt on your hands, no soil under your nails. But the house is smaller. It only has 6 rooms now. One of them is locked from the inside. And on the porch sits a new doll, smaller than the others. She looks like you. You keep living. Of course you do. Ghost stories aren't about death. They're about what we leave behind. And what finds us when we've been alone long enough to invite anything in. Sometimes you hum the lullaby. 6 notes. You never sing the 7th. Sometimes the fan turns off on its own. Sometimes you hear 6 soft knocks all at once from 6 walls. Sometimes the doll is nowhere. And then you see your own reflection blink before you do. You probably won't survive, but you might remember. And if you're very careful, if you speak only in echoes, if you never name her, maybe she'll bury you last. Time forgets the hands that carve the face. The stone remembers. In the end, there are no dolls. Only promises folded into shape. They wait in silence. In lint-lined drawers. In boxes beneath stairs. In dreams, mistaken for memory. You return to the house more often now. Not because it's safe, but because it still hums your song. The seventh note lives inside you, tucked behind the teeth, like a name you were never supposed to speak aloud. And some nights, when all six graves breathe in at once, you do speak it. Not with fear, but with understanding. Because you were never the owner. You were always the echo. You were always the next.